Okay, so you clicked on wanting to learn the difference between the rhythm method and natural family planning. So what's the difference anyway? Well, the only way that we can understand the difference is by understanding what the rhythm method is in the first place, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the rhythm method is, and then I'm going to explain why natural family planning is not the rhythm method. It is not guesswork. It's very scientific, it's very legitimate, and our body tells us deep truths and realities about our biological markers of fertility. So I'm really excited to dig deep in this topic as much as I can in the short time we have together. So before we do that, I want to introduce myself. My name is Jamie Rathjen. I am the co-host of the Hormone Genius Podcast. I am a fertility care practitioner, and I also have a business called the Fiat Institute, where I train women to become hormone coaches. So I love hormones and I love women's health. I love natural family planning and I love my faith. And so it's a beautiful combination when we think about how it all makes sense when you look at it from the big picture, from the top down. So let me first explain what the rhythm method is. So the rhythm method is basically guesswork. It started, the system was used by couples in the 1920s and 1930s when they were trying to avoid pregnancy. Birth control at the time was illegal. Through the Comstock laws. If you want to look into that, type in Comstock laws, but birth control was not legal. And so a way to plan family size was to use the rhythm method. So it basically assumed that every woman's cycle was 28 days and that every woman ovulated on day 14. Now we know that that is not the case, right? And maybe we don't know that. Many doctors still don't know that, but it's true. The average cycle length is between 24 and 36 days, and 13% of women ovulate on day 14. So that is not something that we should base a fertility system based on, simply because many women, most women, don't ovulate on day 14. So if we think about the effectiveness of the rhythm method, where again, the rhythm method basically is just assuming a certain number of days during a month is fertile. I believe it was day 8 through 19 of the cycle. So if we assume that all women have a 28-day cycle and that they're fertile days 8 through 19, and they aren't having intercourse if they're not wanting to have a child, then we would assume that it should work 100% of the time, right? In terms of avoiding pregnancy. But you might have grandmas or great grandmothers or family members in your life who were women, fertile women in the 1920s, 1930s, maybe into the 1940s, who have several children. And again, we know children are blessings, definitely, but likely they may have been using the rhythm method. So because healthy women can have cycles that range between 24 and 36 days, we can now kind of transfer that knowledge that we just learned about how women don't always have a 28-day cycle. So if a woman has a 36-day cycle, let's say, which is totally fine, totally cool. She has a 36-day cycle or 34-day cycle, that would mean that her fertile window would take place after that 19-day mark. So instead of assuming that women were fertile from 8 to day 19, now really truly that woman would be fertile a little later on in her cycle. And if that couple thought that she was infertile at that time because she's outside that window, then they would be having intercourse and they'd be likely getting pregnant. So that's the rhythm method. Basically, it's guesswork based on the number of days in the calendar. And it didn't work very well, essentially. So the beautiful news is that natural family planning has so many systems, so many different systems, based on personality types, based on the lifestyle, based on so many things that women would want to take into consideration, women and couples, to make sure that the system works for them. But there are systems that, again, understand and navigate biological markers of fertility. So what do I mean by biological markers? Some biological markers of fertility are cervical mucus. So cervical mucus, you guys have all probably noticed that around mid-cycle. It increases when your estrogen increases. And estrogen increases right before you ovulate. So you're a very fertile woman when you notice a lot of cervical mucus. So let's say you ovulate later on in your cycle because you have longer cycles. Or maybe you're ovulating earlier on in your cycle because you have shorter cycles. You would know that simply by noticing that you have cervical mucus either earlier or later on in your cycle. And so those would be the times, if you're trying to avoid pregnancy, that you would avoid intercourse during those days. Again, you want to meet with a fertility care practitioner or an NFP instructor or a FEM instructor, Marquette, whatever system you prefer, you want to meet with them because there's more to it than just that simple broad stroke. But cervical mucus is an indicator of fertility. Secondly is your temperature increases after you ovulate. So progesterone is the dominant hormone after you ovulate. Estrogen is the dominant hormone before you ovulate. So we just talked about how estrogen, the dominant hormone before you ovulate, how that hormone is responsible for the production of cervical mucus. So that's your sign of fertility, right? But after you ovulate, that dominant hormone is progesterone. And progesterone sounds a lot like progestate, right? That's how you can remember progestate, pro-gestation, baby. So your body is preparing to welcome a child, basically. So what happens is that progesterone increases your body temperature. So you can take your temperature to basically just, acknowledge that you've ovulated. Now, there are always shifts and considerations to think through when you're taking your temperature. There are aspects like taking, cough medicine or waking up several times in the middle of the night or drinking alcohol the night before. That all impacts your temperature. So that's, again, another reason why you want to make sure that you choose a system that works for you and that you're working with somebody if your goal is to avoid pregnancy, or if your goal, again, is trying to achieve pregnancy and maybe you're having difficulty doing so. So that's another biological marker. So we talked about mucus, we talked about temperature. And then a third one, actually there's a couple more, is cervical position. There's actually several, you guys. Our body is so amazing. Our body tells us when we're fertile in so many ways. These are the most common ones. Another one is cervical position. So in some systems, you actually go and check your cervix. You check to see if your cervix is high or low, if it's hard or soft or open or closed. So when you are fertile, your cervix is very soft and it's open and it's low. And when you are infertile, it's high and it's hard and it's closed. And that makes sense, right? Our cervix is the neck of our uterus, and our cervix is known as like the biological valve. So think of like a faucet. When the faucet knob is turned, liquid is pouring through, right? And you could consider that as being open. Same thing is true for your cervix. When you're fertile, when your estrogen is high, when you're experiencing cervical mucus, your biological valve, your cervix is open. So you can imagine that coming through. So when, again, you are fertile, that cervical position, actually the cervical position is high, not low. Work with somebody on that. I'm trained as a fertility care practitioner, but your cervical position actually is high when you are considered fertile, and low when you're considered infertile. I think I swapped that. So to recap, we have our cervical mucus, which is an indication of estrogen. We have our temperature, which indicates ovulation because it's produced because progesterone is high in the body. Cervical position gives us an understanding on where we're at in our cycle. So again, if it's high and soft and open, that's an indication of fertility. If it's low and hard and closed, that's an indication of infertility. And then lastly, there are monitors that help you monitor your LH levels. And there's also strips that you can like pee on, like a pregnancy test that confirms progesterone. So again, you guys, main point, if you've been wondering, isn't NFP just the rhythm method? The answer is absolutely not, because of what I just said. You might be thinking, wow, there's a lot to it. And that's true, there is. And this is just one tiny little video, but you're going to learn a lot about NFP during this time of videos. And so again, the key would be to ask somebody to work with them. See if you can find an NFP instructor, somebody who can walk you through this process. But you know what, guys? It's an investment in your time and your money in the future. But truly, it will be the best decision you ever make, because understanding your body is so extremely empowering, not just for avoiding or achieving, but also understanding the state of your health. Okay, so through this whole thing, I talked about what the rhythm method is. Okay, so it's basically guesswork. We assume every woman is the same, which we know that's not true, right? 13% of women ovulate on day 14, only 13%. So we know healthy cycles range between 24 and 36 days. So that would mean that we can't just use a calendar to guess when we're fertile. We have to look at our signs of fertility. What are the signs of fertility? Our signs of fertility, like I said, is our mucus, temperature, cervical position, and their strips. There are systems that just focus on one of those three things or a couple of those things. It depends on what you need and want. I personally use a system that just focuses on one of the things. One of the things, just cervical mucus alone. That's all I need. But some people need more data, and that's totally cool. So as I'm going through all those things and you think, oh my gosh, that sounds overwhelming, don't be overwhelmed, because you could just choose a system and get really good at just understanding one of those markers. But again, if you need more data and if you really love that stuff and you want to dig in, just know there are so many systems, and be thinking and reaching out to people that you know are connected to these instructors. So I hope you learned so much. If you haven't already, be sure to follow the Hormone Genius podcast, where 𝗕𝗏, Kenny, and I share all about how to be the genius of your hormones. And then also, if you're looking to dive a little deeper in this, you think, oh my goodness, this sounds incredible, I want to learn more about how I can serve women in this way, please check out my website, fiatinstitute.com. Again, I train women to be hormone coaches. If, again, this is something that really kind of activates your heartstrings, I would love to work with you. So visit that website, reach out to me at 𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗃, 𝗏𝗏𝗃 @gmail.com, and we can also get connected that way. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your experience learning all about the genius of your hormones, learning all about natural family planning, and please be sure to reach out to me if you have any questions. All right, thanks, guys.